Hi everyone, I'm Siobhan McDonald from Granger Street Studios. Welcome to today's program, Made in Massachusetts, Art and Artists. Let's get started. Our next hour is going to be filled with history, art, and stories, all related to our fair state. Many thanks to AgeSpan for hosting us every month and making sure this program gets delivered to you. They connect people of all ages and abilities with information and services to help them lead fulfilling lives in the community. Right at Home Boston North is our sponsor, and I'm so grateful to them for giving us the chance to explore the world of art all around us. They are committed to our community. With over 20 years of exceptional service, their professional teams will ensure that your safety and well-being come first. When we think of Indigenous American arts and crafts, many of us think of Navajo rugs or Northwest tribe basketry. But tribes in the Northeast were artisans also, with traditions stretching back over 10,000 years. The oldest artistic works are made of stone or shell with only bits remaining. But I found this lovely stone bear sculpture from the 1500s can be seen at our wonderful Peabody Essex Museum here in Salem. You might have noticed that labels for artworks by unidentified artists list the maker as artist once known rather than the more traditional artist unknown or anonymous artist. The difference is subtle but important. Artist unknown suggests that an artist's identity is unimportant or that we can't recover it, whereas artist once known implies that an artist was known and celebrated within their community. These artists, once known, were highly skilled, even if they may currently be unknown to us today. In other words, once known reminds us that every artwork was created by an individual who once held ties to a community, a person whose name was known to fellow artists, friends, and loved ones, like this incredible woman who was recorded Barefoot Annie in this 1911 photo. This emphasis on once known also challenges us to think about larger questions. Whose names are preserved in history? Whose stories are left out? Thankfully, museums and archaeologists are catching on. And if you'd like to learn more about Native American art, we have lots of places here in Massachusetts that you can visit, including the one seen here. There was no Puritan view against beauty in the arts, and therefore no objection to visual fineries, but the practicality that was so much a part of the Puritan mindset really limited the amount of art that was produced in the Americas early on. But there was funerary art in Puritan New England, and we've all seen graveyard headstones like this. These were carved between 1640 and the late 18th century. They're not difficult to find locally. Some are quite beautiful. Aside from embellishments on buildings and small decorations in the home, Puritan women created handicrafts and also enjoyed sewing and creating fine fabrics. Paintings also surfaced during the era that the Puritans occupied the land. Thomas Smith, whose self-portrait we see here, was an artist, but also a sailor and a slave trader in colonial New England. I'm going to be jumping back and forth a bit chronologically, so I hope you don't get whiplash as you careen through the centuries. And what I am including is art that could be considered both just purely decorative, functional, or both. Like this 1809 map of Fort Independence, also known as Castle Island in Boston Harbor, drawn by Lieutenant Lewis Peckham. Castle Island is the oldest fortified military site in British North America. Edgar Allan Poe served there in 1827. Here are a few beautiful weather vanes made by Shem Drown, the first coppersmith and tin plate worker in Boston, who was working in the mid-1700s. He was a pioneering metal worker and the first weather vane maker in America. His pieces do come up for auction every now and then if you're interested. For example, this grasshopper sat atop Faneuil Hall for many years. A few years ago, it came up for auction. Its pre-sale price at auction, by the way, was $300,000 to $500,000. Try as I might, I couldn't find the final price, which is fine since I'm pretty sure it's a little bit out of my budget anyhow. Needlework samplers emerged in the early 16th century England as both an educational tool and a symbol of female accomplishment. English colonists brought this skill to America, where it thrived despite the challenges of early colonial life. These surviving samplers are rare treasures. Mary Richardson made this piece sometime in her teens, very close to the time that those weather vanes were made. Both her father and her husband participated in the Boston Tea Party. Have you ever done cross stitch or any other type of needlework or sewing? Well, if you have, I found some new patterns for us. These are pretty funny. When we think of a crafted object that is both functional and beautiful, we often think of furniture. Nathaniel Gould is now recognized as Salem's premier 18th century cabinet maker. He was a merchant trading in hardware, wood, sugar, molasses, and spirits. He also had a monopoly on the best mahogany imported into Salem. And you can see this beautiful piece that was made in Salem, Massachusetts. This is the only signed piece, by the way, by Nathaniel Gould, and it's now at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. We don't know a lot about Gould the man, except that he was the son of one Salem cabinet maker and the father of another, and orphaned at age 12. He later apprenticed to a Charlestown cabinet maker. And as you can see here, an example of this chest of drawers, there are only 5 that we know of still in existence. This is valued at over $500,000. Gould's list of clients is pretty much a snapshot of who's of 18th century Salem. He sold to the Cabots, the Derbys, the Pickmans, Jeremiah Lee, the Dodge family. He even sold to General Thomas Gage, who you see on the right here, the royal governor and commander of British forces in Massachusetts. So here we're getting a look at a couple of portraits by the famous Boston painter, John Singleton Copley. And what we're seeing is people who were not on the same side politically during the Revolutionary conflict, but because Gould was such an astute businessman and so neutral, he was able to serve clients on both sides of that conflict. There are so many beautifully crafted objects that were made by Massachusetts people, including this ring on the upper right that was carved by a Massachusetts Union soldier who was held prisoner at the Libby Prison in Richmond, Virginia during the Civil War. All of these objects tell a story. Now let's look at some Salem statues. This is a statue I bet you've all seen. It's located near Salem Common. Visitors often think this is a statue of a witch. But the man is Roger Conant, who is the founder of Salem. The 60-ton boulder that he stands on was shipped from Lynn. No image of Roger Conant has survived. And so the artist who created this 9-foot tall bronze statue in 1913 fashioned what he imagined a Puritan male figure would look like, with a broad-rimmed hat and a flowing cape. Conant has left a strong legacy in Salem. He was known as the Old Planter and active in the affairs of Salem throughout his life. In case you were wondering, a statue is a specific type of sculpture, usually freestanding, life-size, or larger, and statues represent a person or an animal or a deity. They're meant for commemoration. A sculpture is a broader category that covers any 3-dimensional artwork. So as you can see there, we have a sculpture on the right-hand side from 2015, and this was made in Salem, made out of sticks and wood. This is a sculpture. All statues are sculptures, but not all sculptures are statues. So what do you think about this one? Is this a sculpture or a statue? Let's recall that statues commemorate a person, an animal, or a deity. So what is this one? You're right. This is a sculpture. How about this one? A sculpture or a statue? Yes, this is a statue. Some people see this statue as a tourism boost. Others say it trivializes Salem's historic role as the site of the 1692 witch trials. It has become a very popular photo stop in Salem. Here's a fun fact. The series Bewitched actually filmed several episodes in Salem for its 7th season in 1970 after a fire shut down its Hollywood set. The cast and crew stayed at the Hawthorne Hotel while filming, and here on the left, we can see a scene that was filmed outside the elevators at the Hawthorne Hotel, and on the right-hand side, we have another scene that's showing them driving by the witch house. Have you ever visited the Peabody Essex Museum? The Peabody Essex Museum was founded in 1799, really in part to collect ships' logs and navigation instruments and sea charts. And the thought was that mariners could consult them to increase the safety at sea for all of them. But this collection rapidly expanded to include ship models, paintings, and prints. What's going on in this picture? Well, we're looking at Salem Common. Salem Common, that large, attractive park in the heart of the city, has been public land since Salem's early days. However, a portion of these 8 acres was originally a swampy area with several ponds and small hills. The higher ground was used as a pasture for goats and cows originally, which were brought out to graze for the day and then returned to their owners at night by the town cowherd. But from as early as 1685, the dry part of the common was also used as the designated area where people could practice shooting in order to be prepared for military duty. Needing a place for regular military drills, it was voted in 1714 by the commoners to be forever kept as a training field for the use of Salem. Annual training day brought local militia units from neighboring towns and communities that would parade around in dress uniform through Salem streets to meet at the Common. And you can imagine that this day was celebrated by early Salem residents who described colorful parades and puppet shows and athletic events and socializing happening during this time. In 1801, Salem's Elias Haskett Derby II, who was a colonel in the militia, raised $2,500, which was used to improve the field's conditions. Ponds were filled in, the surface was leveled, and rows of poplar trees were planted. Unfortunately, all the poplar trees were destroyed in 1815 by a great gale and were replaced with elms a couple of years later. Let's talk about Fitzhenry Lane. This artist was born in Gloucester, Mass. In 1804. From the time of his birth, Lane was exposed to the sea and maritime life. Here you can see on the left their family home, which is a National Historic Site, along with a statue on the upper right of Lane, which is along the Gloucester waterfront. Lane would most likely have pursued some kind of a seafaring career or become a sailmaker like his father instead of an artist if it wasn't for a lifelong handicap that he developed as a child. Although the cause is unknown with certainty, it's thought that he somehow ingested some part of a plant known as the Peru apple, a poisonous weed also called devil's trumpet or Jimson weed. around the age of 18 months. And we all know how toddlers are. They put things in their mouth. Well, when he did that, it caused paralysis of his legs from which he would never recover. It's been suggested that because he could not play games like the other children did, he was forced to find some other means of amusement. And that as he pursued that, he discovered and was able to develop his talent for drawing. Before he became an artist, he worked for a short time making shoes. But after a while, seeing that he could draw pictures better than he could make shoes, he went to Boston and took lessons in drawing and painting and became a maritime artist. Here's his 1853 painting of Salem Harbor. You can see this painting in person at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. 1 year later, he made this painting of Boston Harbor. Fitzhenry Lane is often described as a luminist, someone who captures precise and atmospheric effects of light. We understand the importance of shipping to the economy and the connection with our New England history. But we can see here that the actual subject of this painting is light. This painting is at the Cleveland Museum of Fine Arts. We have some incredible world-class museums here in Massachusetts, as you know, and some that are kind of quirky. I'm going to flip through a few slides, and I'd love you to raise your hand if you have ever visited any of these. Like the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Have you ever been to the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem? What about the Norman Rockwell Museum in Stockbridge? Raise your hand if you've ever visited the Orchard House in Concord. This was the home of Louisa May Alcott, the author of Little Women. How about the Dr. Seuss Museum in Springfield? I have not been there, but I would love to go. Raise your hand if you've ever seen the glass flower collection at the Harvard Museum of Natural History. What about the armor collection at the Worcester Art Museum? It's the second biggest collection of armor in the country. Raise your hand if you've ever been to the Hammond Castle Museum in Gloucester. So many museums. We are very lucky in Massachusetts to have this wealth of treasures. Here are a few more you may not have heard of. There are some artists who lived or worked or both in Massachusetts that I am not focusing on during this program, but only because we've looked at a lot of their work in previous programs. People like Norman Rockwell and John Singer Sargent. I thought we could look at some lesser-known artists, like the Freak Painter, also known as the Freak Limner or the Freak Gibbs Painter. The Freak Painter was a once-known American portrait painter who has been described as North America's first major artist. This work is generally considered as the finest American painting of the 17th century. The Freaks were, and you could see, this is their last name, Freak, and that is why that artist is known as the Freak Painter. The Freaks were, by the standards of their time, extremely prosperous as well as upwardly mobile. They were interested in luxury and in obtaining the best goods and workmanship available in 17th century Boston. Here we see Mrs. Freak's husband. Mr. Freak does not at all fit the stereotype of the grim New England Puritan. He exudes charm, dressed in his best clothes and holding a glove in his hand. He seems thoroughly pleased with himself. And indeed, he had good reason to be. He was an early specimen of a successful entrepreneur. John Freak emigrated from England by 1658, and he became a successful merchant and attorney in Boston. His family background, and we're looking here at his birthplace, his home in the family home in Dorset, England. Clearly, he comes from a family of means. And the family background suggests that he brought significant financial and other resources with him from England. He is not a self-made man, people. Not too shabby. About 10 portraits, all painted between 1670 and 74, in showing residents of Boston have been attributed to the freak painter. It's been suggested that the artist might be identified as a man named Samuel Clement, who had arrived from England in 1635 and was previously trained as a painter in England. We can't be sure of this at this point because he did not sign his paintings. We've talked a lot about Salem and the Boston area, but this is probably one of the most famous paintings to come out of Massachusetts. View from Mount Holyoke, Northampton, Massachusetts, after a thunderstorm. Commonly known as the oxbow. It's a supremely important American landscape painted by Thomas Cole, who is the founder of the Hudson River School. Cole never lived in Massachusetts. He settled in the Catskills after moving from Ohio. The 1836 painting shows us this romantic panorama of the Connecticut River Valley just after a thunderstorm. It's been sort of interpreted as this, confrontation between wilderness and civilization. By the way, Cole may have chosen to walk, which was his favorite way of traveling, the 120 miles of countryside from his house in Catskill to get to Mount Holyoke. It would have taken 6 days to get there and 6 days to get back. That would have given him a lot of time to observe, study, and internalize the facts of the natural world around him. Notice the shapes on the hillside. And I'm looking here on right here, where you see this yellow circle. Years after the painting was completed, someone noticed that when it's viewed upside down, as if from God's perspective, the Hebrew word Shaddai is formed, which means the Almighty. A close look also can reveal, and I know it's tough to see, but within this circle, there's an easily overlooked self-portrait in this low part of the painting. Wow, our time is flying by, and I like to end things on fun notes. Learning random fun facts is, well, fun. So here we go. Did you know that Massachusetts has the largest piece of copyrighted art on the planet? It's in Boston along 93, which is known for its gridlock. So for locals, it's an everyday sight. I'm talking about the gas tanks. This work of art is lovingly called the Rainbow Swash. A nun named Sister Carita Kent was commissioned by the then Boston Gas Company to beautify this monstrous blank white gas tank. There was some controversy. People wondered if it was a statement against the Vietnam War because some people saw what looked like the profile of Ho Chi Minh in this blue swash, although Sister Carita always denied intentionally embedding that Vietnamese leader's face in the paint. Maybe it was just a palette of bright popping colors designed to make us smile. Carita Kent, who was known as Sister Mary Carita, was an artist with an innovative approach to design and education. At age 18, she entered the religious order, Immaculate Heart of Mary, and eventually was teaching and then headed the art department at that college, which was in California. She urged viewers to consider poverty, racism, and social injustice. In 1968, she left the order and moved to Boston. In 1992, the original rainbow painted tank was torn down, so the rainbow swash was recreated on the adjacent tank, which stands today. What a treat to spend time with you today. I'm so thankful to AgeSpan and Right at Home Boston North for providing this opportunity. I'm wishing you all a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, goodbye, friends. Goodbye, friends. Goodbye, friends. It's time to say goodbye. Goodbye, my friends. I'll see you soon.